A series of armed robberies happened near Geylang today.
Singapore in the 1950s and 60s, it was quite a violent era.
We see parang, we see bottle of acid. Don't wait, run.
Crime is something that you cannot control.
They were up against bigger odds back then.
Two gunmen known as the Wahab-Hassan Brothers are on the run.
I was thinking, why don't I pick up my gun and shoot again?
What Wahab did next was a daring move. He planned to strike in the twilight hours of the following day. Singapore was a cowboy town. My name is Emerick Gill. I'm a practicing lawyer in Singapore of 23 years standing. I graduated from the UK bar and I was called to the Singapore bar in 1998. I was fortunate to do my pupillage in the best criminal law firm back then, Palakrishnan and Partners. Has been uploaded and do a prison booking to see Simon. Because if that amended charge is coming in, we got to see him. Criminal law is very hands-on. You have to be there, you have to be in the thick of it. And I guess part of my interest was due to my father's influence. My dad retired as a senior police officer. And I remember many a day after school, sitting down in his office, looking at his files. And I guess the highlight was when he would take my brother and me downstairs to look at all the cells. It was a different kind of childhood, having a dad as a cop and seeing his gun at home and having a family dinner and a phone call goes off or there's an incident somewhere and dad just goes. There was one instance, I remember this story. My father came back home one night and he told me that he had been at Newton Circus and he recognized somebody whom he possibly thought was a wanted man. So he went up to this person and identified himself. And to my dad's shock, that man pulled out a Smith & Wesson and pointed it directly at my father's forehead. So it was like a Mexican standoff, both staring at each other. And after a while, the guy chickened out and ran off. And another manhunt, and finally they got the guy. For want of a better phrase, Singapore was a cowboy town in the 70s. I mean, my dad and his team were busy. Back in the 1960s, 3/4 of Singapore's population lived in overcrowded slums. Tensions were also high due to the 1950 and 1963 race riots. Furthermore, from 1957 to 1970, our unemployment rate increased.
At that point in time, Singapore was actually at the turbulent period. Not easy to find a good job, and especially a withdrawal of the British Army from Singapore after the separation of Singapore from Malaysia. A lot of unemployment. I joined the force in 1967. In my childhood days, I was actually playing about with all the neighborhood gangs in Newer. That was the place of my birth. And as you know, Newer was actually infested by secret society, partly because of a lot of lucrative activities, such as vices, gambling dens. So I happened to be in that neighborhood. So I play along with those secret society members. Somehow I found that I think still the best to join the Singapore Police Force for security.
My real name is actually Ahmad Osman. My mother changed my name while I was very, very young. That's why everyone now call me Atan. I'm an eldest son of a family of 10 children. So I work day and then work at night as musician. Those days, sad thing to say, every cinema there's gangsters around. The Rex restaurant was there. On the left hand side, it was Hainan's coffee shop. That's where we all sit, drink coffee and all that. Sometimes we go toilet, you see parang, we see bottle of acid. Don't wait, run. Because we know it's going to be gang clash and that's where they hide their weapons there. When things happen almost on a daily basis, that means nothing to us anymore, right? It's normal, very, very normal. And you hear things always, you hear gang fight, shooting. I finished my university education in 1969-70. Immediately after graduation, I joined the legal service and was deployed to the Attorney General's chambers. We were the pioneer of the Singaporeanization from colonial legal service to Singapore legal service. You see, those days, gangsterism was a main problem. Well, each area had their own gang. So with criminals from other branches all being involved, well, this is where criminal law comes in. Singapore, the happenings were few and far apart, but crime is something that you cannot control. When it blossoms out of hand.
There was a notorious female gang. Now they are known as the red butterfly or Uncle Chiap in Hokkien. And the members, they have the black or blue butterfly either on the shoulder there or on the thigh there. The leaders will have red butterfly. They are very, very strong and very powerful.
In Singapore in the 1950s and 60s, it was quite a violent era with secret societies activities, many gang clashes, stabbings, extortion. Because of the secret societies activities so rampant, the police introduced a special unit known as the Phantom Squad. The first team of Phantom Squad came from a team from the police reserve at Mount Vernon. The objective of the Phantom Squad was to suppress the secret society activities and to expose their hideouts. And the weapons occurred. They have bearing scrapers, daggers, nunchaku, spears, parangs, acid bombs. But the guns will be different. These are more of a violent nature.
We all have to understand, while our first generation political leaders were scrambling to define Singapore's roadmap, the underworld emerged and began to capitalize on it. There were many gangs and many triads involved in human trafficking, prostitution, drug trafficking, and unfortunately even arms smuggling.
Three good examples of notorious kidnappers. One of them is Morgan Teo. We had a gunfight at Sim Lim Park where an inspector of police was shot dead. We have O Kim Kee, gunfight at Sims Avenue. Lim Bang Ling, a gunfight at Margaret Drive where one detective was shot dead. And of course, the Wahab Brothers.
people call me Dirty Harry. I opened fire 8 times during my 12-year service, of which I don't think anybody can beat my record. We talk about undercover, it comes to the Malay word which they say for detective. Malay word for detective is mata gelap. Mata gelap means dark side of the detective. So for undercover is the same. You cannot look like ordinary cops to be undercover. So you got to blend. When we are called up for undercover is to get information, and we have to blend with the people inside to get news like drugs, who is selling and all that. When we join the undercover, the most important is to get our goal and results. Fear of being hurt or whatsoever never come into our mind. So I think that is the first thing you need to be a good policeman. So if you are worried about not coming back home after your work, then better don't join. So undercover is not really a glamorous job, and if you get found out, honestly, your life will be in danger. The reason why I go to Labrador is because there was a number of report cases of theft at the beaches. So when I interviewed the victims, I was asking them, did they use a knife to rob you? He said, no, a gun. So I took out my Swift and Western, which is black in color, and I showed them, is this the kind of gun? Then he said, no, it's chrome and bigger in size. And in the force, I have not seen a chrome gun before. So the first thing in my mind, a chrome gun, it could be a fake. I drove to Labrador, and then at the Gilman Circus, I saw this Mini was driven by a Malay guy with long hair. So I've been following them. They drove down Alexandra Road and then Pas Panjang and turned into Labrador. If I keep on following them behind, they may get suspicious. So I overtook them. I went to the top of the hill where there's a vendor selling pineapple water. So I stopped there to have a drink.
Okay. Rồi. Ok. Ok. Rồi, mừng quỳ á.
So they parked the car beside mine.
Đây,
Ông lại suy mừng quê.
mừng quỳ.
They came down to have ordered drinks and
Lấy cái gì?
drinking beside me. I take a look at the waist. I saw a pouch that resembled a pistol. So I suspect it was a gun. And I told my men in Chinese, get ready. No, when we are the enforcer, if we were to enforce the law through a gun and all that, you also have to expect the underworld who can be armed. And they are not going to be like the movies, aiming the gun at you and talk to you. They also will shoot. It's all instinct lah. We don't prepare ourselves. We enforce the law, and whoever breaks it, we try to apprehend him. And if he's armed, then it's our duty to protect our own self. If there's no reinforcement. So when you are alone, especially I work alone, Lone Ranger, I don't expect people to help me. It's either I help myself or I die doing it. So when they ordered the drinks and went off, I've been following them towards the Iron Bridge. I dropped my gun and I shouted, "Police, stop!"
Police!
Mustapha turned back and claimed that he was also from the police, but he spoke to me in Malay. Saya pun police. When he saw me took out the gun, he grabbed his partner, Muhammad Dom, and used him as a shield. I saw the chrome gun emerging from the armpit of Muhammad Dom, the shield. I rushed forward, I grabbed both of them and plunged my gun into the target behind and I opened fire. When I was hit, the bullet went through my neck and I felt a jerk on my neck. I fell down. I was still conscious and I noticed my gun was still there. And I was thinking, why don't I pick up my gun and shoot again? My mind said pick up the gun, but my fingers doesn't move. I was completely paralyzed. So when we reached SGH, the doctors came forward and they saw my tattoos and all that. The doctors say, "You were shot by the police." So I told him, "No, I'm the police. I was shot by the gunman." That's where they pushed me to the emergency room. Well, the bullet went through my neck, you see. The entry is from here. Right now it's healed, but when I was hit, it was a 20-cent coin big, and it emerged from the back of the spine.
This is an article that describes the shooting of Detective Devi Chan by Mustapha. Devi Chan was conveyed to Outram Hospital. Well, it was a tough job because back then it was really tough times. Naturally, the police force back then, I'm talking about the 70s and 80s, did not have all the resources or the equipment or the training that they have now. And they were up against bigger odds back then in terms of the triads, the syndicates, the drugs, the extortion, the kidnapping, the robberies. So my dad's job was very, very tough. He shared quite a number of stories. Some of them are naturally very harrowing. And for example, the Wahab-Hassan Brothers case, he was part of the search party. I don't think my dad felt like he was doing anything special. It was a job. It was a job that he did daily and on 24 hours standby. And there were times I'm sure that he must have felt that, okay, I'm going to hit the streets today, we're going to take down this guy. And I'm sure he must have thought whether or not he'll come back to his family. You really had to have nerves of raw steel to be a law enforcement officer in the 70s and the early 80s. After the shooting, Mustapha contacted his brother Wahab, and both of them went on a run, and they were seeking refuge in a home of a distant relative.
Two gunmen known as the Wahab-Hassan Brothers are on the run. Police are looking for two gunmen involved in the...
Mustapha, kenapa ni? Teruk tak nak pergi hospital?
Tak payah.
Ada kain.
Tahan. Hei, weh, bangun. Bangun.
Tutup pintu.
Tak nak pergi hospital ke?
呃，从1970年开始就在《华文报》当记者，所以在报界有42年了。我进报馆，我记得我一开始就被分派采访这个意外新闻了。那么的确是看到了不少低下阶层跟社会的种种现象。那个时候可能是因为经济不是很好，教育也不是很普遍，所以犯罪率来讲，一般上是比较高了。我从认识字开始，我就喜欢看武侠小说啊、推理小说这一类的，所以对于写这个意外新闻啊，我是非常有兴趣的。我就好像在写侦探故事这样。我们那个时候跑意外新闻，警方每一天都有2次的记者会了，一次是早上9点，一次是下午4点，他们都会汇报当天或者是过去24小时发生的一些重大罪案的一些简单的这个内容啊。Wahab Brothers 的这个事件啊，我记得是一间金店发生的劫案的时候啊，Wahab Brothers 的新闻就开始引人注意了就从那个时候开始，Wahab 兄弟的新闻就陆续见报，而且越搞越大众，搞到这个牵动整个社会这样。70年代讲一句不好听的，就是开枪打抢勒索的这个案件非常多，尤其是打抢金店啊、当店啊，还有邮政局。那个时候拿现款，很多人去邮政局拿的。那个时候还没有这个邮政银行啊。
I was in the organized crime branch in the 70s. At that time, the police report of gun offenses was almost every fortnightly. In the 1960s and 70s, the police issued licenses for Singapore citizens to carry firearms such as rifle, shotgun, revolver, and pistol. And for the prominent citizens and retired senior civil servants, police officers, army officers who are of the high risk to crimes, they were allowed to carry a pistol or revolver. And for those who want to possess shotgun and rifle, they must belong to the gun club. In the secret society and criminal world, there is a subculture. If you possess a firearm, it would elevate your status to the higher hierarchy. And most of the criminals, they strive to possess firearm and to use firearm to commit crimes. And once they have done that, they will command tremendous respect in the underworld, including when they go to prison.
So the first Malay gang that came to know to us was actually the Merah Putih. Now what happened was that this group of people, actually they were the former employee of the charter industry, where they produced M16 machine gun. So what they did was when they came to mind to commit a certain criminal activity, they came up with this idea of each of them will be made to steal a part of the gun. Each will take a part and throw out of the charter industry outside the fencing area. So in the middle of the night, they will go back to pick up all those parts, then assemble them again.
那个时候的租枪组织的黑枪都是从国际性的，这个租枪组织是跨国的，尤其是泰马边境，因为从火车一直南下新加坡是比较快的，那么也有坐飞机就从吉隆坡飞过来，这个边线就是边关这个海陆空的这个关卡还没有那个设施还没有完善完备了，所以有一些难免有一些枪火他们是从这个海陆空三方面进来了。
I escaped again into Thailand. I began to amass for myself some information where I could lay my hands on some of these firearms. And as a result, I also came across people who were armed. And I found out that they had a very sophisticated or modern at that time arms. And I found that they could get the Browning automatic, especially those sold to them by GIs or American servicemen or even British. And some of them left over and brought over from Vietnam and Cambodia. They were almost literally freely sold around town, in the brothels there, even in hotel rooms. And it wouldn't be a strange thing to go into a gambling den and find somebody losing and then taking out his brand new or very new looking automatic pistol and then putting it on the table and offering it for sale. And you could just get it at a very cheap price of 300-400 Singapore dollars at that time. Then I smuggled them back to Singapore, and it was really not difficult at all.
那个非法分子藏在这个行李箱或者说挖空的一些书本，他挖空了放在里面走私过来。那么也有是通过海盐，或者是听说有一些还通过这个渔船放在那个鱼的肚子里面。一般上警方是不会透露这些，不会向报界透露这个租枪组织的内幕了，怕说报纸万一爆出来，会影响他们的调查工作，那么也会打草惊蛇，使到这个黑枪集团的其他分子跑掉。
Before the Wahab brothers escalated, they started their careers with petty theft, and they moved on to robberies. And there was this robbery in 1972 involving Madam Chan here. So it was both Wahab and Mustapha. They came to her goldsmith shop. She was quick enough to press the alarm button and she yelled out to her family who was working at the shop. Both the Wahab brothers fled, but before they fled, they fired 3 shots at Madam Chan, her husband, and their 4 sons. Thankfully, all the shots missed. So this was what it was like back then. 2 guys with pistols or handguns, they just walk up and bang bang. Utter lawlessness. But with no record of the brothers travelling out of Singapore during their criminal days, how then exactly did they get their guns?
那我是从一条法庭新闻里面先找出这个上海仔跟那个Wahab兄弟的一些干案手法时间都蛮配合了。那后来就去 CID 打听一下，果然是他们是有联系的。
Stephen Low, age 24, also known as Shanghai Boy, had formulated a plan in 1972 to commit a series of robberies. He recruited a motley crew of gangsters, including the infamous Wahab-Hassan Brothers. And in order to facilitate his plans, he actually flew to Bangkok to purchase firearms and ammunition. But on September 1972, Low was arrested upon his return to Singapore. He led the police to a flat in Tiong Bahru where the police recovered a pistol, a revolver, a staggering 236 bullets, a gun holster, and a dagger. Low was found to have smuggled a total of 5 pistols into Singapore. Of the 5, 2 were seized at the flat and 1 was seized during Low's arrest. And the 2 remaining guns, which were 2 9mm automatic pistols, were with the Wahab brothers.
Teruk sangat ni. Tak pergi hospital ke?
Mus, please Mus. Jangan ngomong. Mus.
Police reports after the incident recount that just as the police were about to move into the hut, Wahab dashed out. And he shot at an inspector. A shot was returned, but by that time Wahab had already disappeared into the darkness, and he was last seen heading towards the adjoining kampongs in the Paya Lebar area.
Oi, Mus.
Boy.
Apa khabar?
Baik. Apa barang?
Cantik.
Baik. Cantik.
The Wahab-Hassan Brothers were the most notorious pair of brothers in 1972 Singapore. They were involved in a series of armed robberies, with firearms provided by Shanghai boy, whose real name was later ascertained to be a Stephen Low. The younger brother, Muhammad Mustapha Hassan, once shot a detective. The older brother, Abdul Wahab-Hassan, was branded as a two-gun thug who would not hesitate to shoot and kill. While the police were able to arrest the injured Mustapha, Wahab managed to escape.
那么那个时候，新闻又爆出来了，又成为几乎是各报的头条。那么我们又开始留意所谓马来大盗双枪马来大盗兄弟了。在过去发生的一些案件里面啊，很少有兄弟拿枪去打抢，这个算是比较特别一点，所以特别引起警方的注意，当然也引起这个报界的关心。
About 2 weeks later, the police released more information. Apparently, Mustafa's accomplice, a Muhammad Dom, had surrendered to the police just a few days after the shootout. The information was withheld from the press for fear that the investigations would be affected by public knowledge of Dom's surrender.
I heard the name only, Wahab and Mustapha. I know it's Mustapha, my classmate, you know. I remember this guy, Mustapha. He was in my class. He was a handsome guy, you know. He was a good-looking guy, good smile, you know. I fought with him once. But those were kids fighting, you know. I met some of my schoolmates, classmates. They were talking about it and I said, what to do? What can you do? What can I do? What can we do? Nothing.
One of the most prevalent offences in the 70s involving firearms was robbery. 1968, 1,067 cases. 1971, a mere 3 years later, doubled to 2,100 cases. 1972, within a 12-month period, 1,715 cases. So things were really spiraling out of hand.
Well, the firearms criminal law emanated in 1947 with the Arms Offences Ordinance. Earlier, in 1946, there was also the Arms and Ammunition Unlawful Possession Act. You see, the law in those days was not so comprehensive then.
Given the time, it was justifiable. But people being people, what happened? The whole thing escalated. All the perpetrators and the offenders knew what the punishment would be, right, if they get caught. It's a walk in the park.
逃掉以后啊，这个下落怎么样啊？然后各报追踪了2、3天，大概也把注意力转去别的案件了。
After Mustapha was arrested, he was first housed at the Changi prison. However, due to the gunshot wound at his hip, Mustapha was transferred to the Outram Hospital for surgery. During this time, the Singapore Police Force also reached out to the Malaysian Royal Police to help in the hunt for Wahab in the event that Wahab was planning to leave Singapore. Further, all the Singapore exit points were on the lookout for Wahab, and doctors were informed to contact the police immediately should anyone turn up for treatment due to a gunshot wound. On the 11th of December 1972, Mustapha was once again transferred to the Outram Hospital for treatment when two men visited him. These were the boyfriends of Mustapha's sisters who had been sent by Wahab as a reconnaissance party to assess the security surrounding Mustapha.
Well, when he was arrested, I was still in the hospital. And I heard that he was the next ward opposite me. So the ward, we have the glass windows. And when the inspector in charge went to interview Mustapha, and Mustapha, thinking that I was dead, pushed the blame to Muhammad Dom, saying that it was Muhammad Dom who shot me dead. The inspector came back to me, showed me the photograph of Wahab and Mustapha, and asked me, "Who shot you?" I pointed Mustapha. So he went back to interview Mustapha. He said, "You think that the detective is dead?" He said, "Yes." He put the blame on Muhammad Dom. He said, "You look over the other side, the detective is there." So as he turned his head and glanced at me and I glanced at him, then he realized the truth. So he admitted that he was the one who shot instead of Muhammad Dom.
What Wahab did next was a daring move. He planned to strike in the twilight hours of the following day.
No, I ever tell Mustapha, I say, "You take me alone, you release them, can or not?" He said, "No, everyone must go."
所以看过去，那天好像是天很暗啊， 那么而且要下雨的样子。我过后就听到那个发射催泪弹的声音，还有几声枪声啊。